Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'd like you to introduce yourself if you don't mind.
Okay.
What's like your name, your profession, and so on.
Okay, I'm Lisa M. Walters.
Okay.
I'm the Assistant Professor of Operations Management here at State University of New York at Fredonia. And I have been here in a full-time capacity for 3 years. This is my 3rd year as a full-time capacity, and I was an adjunct, meaning that I was only like part-time here for 12 years, and because I had a professional career within like quality operations in biomedical for years.
Okay. Well, last time you were telling me that you were really focused on quality.
Yes.
And that you were a black belt.
Yes.
So I'd like to know what means being a black belt.
Okay, let me talk to you a little bit about that. I like I said, I came from a biomedical industry.
Yeah, of course.
And so, here in the United States, the biomedical industry is regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. And here in the United States, that could be scarier than the IRS, the taxing authority here in the United States. And so they have very rigorous requirements, and we have to comply, or we can lose our licenses for operation.
Yeah,
and so years ago, we kind of moved from that model of just making sure we comply with the FDA requirements to saying we need better systems, if you would. So that we can maintain compliance and continually improve. And at about that time, and that was more years ago than I care to mention, we started embracing this idea of having like quality management systems, basically looking at those ISO standards and so forth. But then as quality evolved, we realized we had to have ways to have these like breakthrough and incremental improvements. And I think that's consistent the world over. How do we systematically solve problems? How do we systematically improve? And that's what Six Sigma fills that gap. It's a systematic framework for improvement. So oftentimes people will talk about that framework and you hear them say DMAIC, and it's really DMAIC, define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. And you can be different levels within the practice of Six Sigma. So like maybe if you're an executive and you kind of know they're doing that in the business, you might be like a white belt. And then maybe a manager who's not really participating that much, has a little more knowledge, might be a yellow belt. And then you can become a green belt. A green belt knows how to use the tools, participates on project teams, but that's not their full-time gig. They go back to their regular jobs when they're not on a project. And then black belts are the ones that's what they do. They're managing Six Sigma projects. Mm-hmm. And then master black belts then oversee that. Okay, so they train the black belts, and so that trickles down. In my mind too, the black belts have a little bit more knowledge of some of the tools. I certainly don't claim. I mean, I'm still studying. I study under one of the mentors that I have from a corporation called Lord Corporation here in the United States, and he's a master black belt. And he's brilliant, and if I can only be him when I grow up, I'd be all set. But so it's always learning, and so does that kind of answer your question? The different levels and so forth.
Yeah,
okay.
It's okay. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. Well, you've been in an industry, you told me, like 20 years.
Yes.
Working for an industry. And one interesting question that I think we all have in the school is, what does quality mean to you? Quality
to me is never having to say I'm sorry. That's what it is. And to me, it's because of my industry in biomedical. Every industry touches a human being. Every industry does.
Yeah, of course.
Biomedical and specifically like the blood industry, the tissue industries, they touch people in profound ways. And people that are sick, people that are need a blood transfusion, need a transplant to survive. And we have every obligation to make sure not only do they get an effective blood transfusion or effective organ, but we should do that in a way that's cost effective so that we're able to offer that more to people that are in need. So to me, quality is doing the right things at the right time, all with an eye on that customer, the ultimate customer, whose life may depend on how well we did it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Really good. No, well, would you went into other, how could I say it, into other topic that I didn't think about, and it was really good because
Okay.
maybe because of being an industrial engineer is kind of looking that everything's go right. You have to check that the client is the satisfaction of the client as well. So getting into lives is kind of interesting. It was a really nice definition of quality means to you. Other thing that I would like to know is, well, you have been in some industries, and I'd like to know which one was one of the hardest, I don't know, like problems you have ever faced.
The blood industry.
The
Blood industry, blood product industry. So like the American Red Cross Biomedical, Blood Systems Incorporated, these are blood organizations. Okay, so here in the United States, New York Blood Center, when you're going to be going to New York, the New York Blood Center, we have a lot of special challenges. And it's a difficult industry. Now, number one, think about that as an industrial engineer. Think of the supply chain there. The supply chain that's coming in is a human supply chain, right? So we have human variation that we have to account for. We have to have some way to qualify that human variation, and then in some ways, and we have to figure out how do I want to say this? How do we apply like scientific principles? Because we're really providing a product to the medical industry, and we do lab testing, transfusion analysis, for a better word, like testing to make sure cross-matching, make sure blood's compatible and so forth. And so we have a lot of variance within our processes that maybe somebody that's making, like I have done work for companies that make valves, for example. We have a lot more variation than they do, and in particular with our incoming material. Okay, so those present a lot of challenges. And then, you have to think about it too from the human resources standpoint. So many of the people that do work in the blood industry they're not engineers. They're not, technical technicians. They're not machinists. Many of them are medical technologists. There are nurses, there are nursing nursing aides, there are medical lab technicians. There are a lot of folks within that industry that came to blood through medicine. Okay, so they see that as first. That we see medicine and the need to help a person as first, and processes are something that's secondary to that. Whereas I believe technically, like in other industries, things go X, Y, and Z. You can be trained to be a machinist, and that's pretty much it. The process is first.
Yeah.
So you're trained to that first. And in our industry, you're trained to medicine first, and then the other stuff is secondary. Yeah. Does it make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I think that's where you have a lot of issues, and also the biomedical industry, particularly the blood industry, a heavily regulated industry, particularly here in the United States. So it has all of those different challenges, and it's exciting. It's an exciting industry. And here's the other particular challenge in blood is that the need for blood is kind of shrinking. So we're all competing against each other for a piece of the pie, but now the pie itself is smaller. So you have those competitive pressures as well. Okay.
Quite interesting, I have to say.
It is.
Yeah, and it's quite competitive, I think. Okay, but now going not from a biomedical, what are you, bachelor, engineer? Or
my background, I'm a medical technologist, my undergrad, a technologist.
Okay. So going further from there and going back to quality, what do you think, or what, in your opinion, makes an enterprise grow?
Management commitment, leadership to relentless improvement.
Leadership
to relentless improvement.
Okay.
Yeah, to always be willing to take a risk, evaluate that need for a risk, and take it. Okay, so having the leadership and the courage to take a risk, and knowing that risk, knowing that innovation or that idea may fail, but doing it anyway. But evaluating it, making the right choices, putting plans together, implementing it, learning from that, and then moving forward. So you'll hear places like, well, you'll go to some places and like neglected employment creativity is one of the lean wastes, right?
Yeah,
Neglected, all right. Okay, so it's a lean waste because if we don't listen to our employees and are willing to innovate and take a chance to innovate, then we're stagnating, right? We're stagnating. So the organizations that say, let's take this chance and let's give this a try and see what happens. And if we fail, we fail. We learn from that mistake and try again. Those are the organizations that will succeed.
Okay. Interesting answer. And as last question, because I have entered to two classes from you.
Okay.
So I'd like to know, well, what do you think, or what background do you need if you are going to implement lean at an enterprise?
What background do you need? You mean as the practitioners?
Yeah.
I think anybody can learn lean. I think anybody can learn lean. I really do. I don't think you have to have like special training. Well, excuse me, you do have to have special training. You have to, but I mean like you don't need to have you don't have to have a degree in engineering.
Yeah,
you don't have to have a degree in medical technology. You just have to be taught how, taught those tools. And I think they can be applied. They can be applied everywhere. I mean, I almost get goosebumps because lean can be applied everywhere. And in every industry. And it's the low-hanging fruit, right?
Yeah.
Like, so you can take something and you can do something immediately, and that's motivating. Whereas Six Sigma is like this long, drawn-out affair, and you sometimes are like, oh, am I ever going to get to the end of it? Lean, you see an immediate result, right? And or pretty close to an immediate result. And so it's a lot more motivating, a lot more engaging. I've seen people do lean that were from cleaning staff. Cleaning staff people.
Okay.
I think it's, and again, just like anything else in quality, it is a team effort, right? So you might have a team, and you might have an engineer on that team, and you might have a cleaning person on that team. Both can bring something to the table, and somebody can learn something from them, right?
Yeah, of course. Well,
Did you ever hear of the guy Bill Nye, the science guy?
No.
Bill Nye, the science guy. You can look him up. He was here on campus, and he said, always remember, whoever you meet knows something that you don't know. Right?
Quite right.
Right. And so we have to think about that. Like when we think about like process teams and organizational teams, we shouldn't go through a list and say, oh, they have an engineering degree or they have medical technology. Oh, they're this. You need to look at everybody because everybody knows something that you don't. And they can bring that and they can learn it. And they can be wildly successful in helping your company.
Okay. That was really, really interesting because sometimes we are, at least in Mexico, having a degree is really important. So they usually don't take on account the people who don't have like a degree in something. So what you're saying is quite interesting because that's right. I have met a lot of people who are from different majors than I am, and I have learned something about them. So yeah. Interesting thing to see lean.
and think about it though, with all the people that you meet in your life. I always say the smartest man, one of the smartest people I ever knew in my life was my father. And he was so smart, but he never went past the 8th grade. Sometimes we just have the benefit of an education, and that shouldn't preclude anybody else from participating.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's so nice to meet you and have you in classes. So.
Yeah, well, I'll continue there if you let me.
Okay. Oh, yeah, great.
So
thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Hope to see you again.
Okay. All right.